Hi, I'm Jan Marie, and this is Wyse Talk. I am so excited that our guest is here today. I've been reading his columns for 100 years, and I actually remember some of them, and we're going to discuss it today with Randall Beach of the New Haven Register.
Thank you for having me on here.
I'm so happy that you're here. I've looked at your picture for years, and you look exactly like your picture. Do you know that?
Well, I've been told that my picture doesn't quite capture me always, but that's an acquired taste, so that's okay.
You really look, for me, you look like your picture. But before we get started with the questions that I have for you, you brought in your first column and your picture when you were a little tyke. How old were you at this time?
We're talking November 1980, so I was 30 years old. It wasn't 100 years ago, but it was.
I'm just going to
it does go back.
It does. I'm just going to hold this up, and I don't know. We don't have a cameraman to zoom in real close, but actually, you don't look that much different except the hair color.
I guess that's good.
Yeah, let me just look at that. You look like Randall.
Yeah, it was blonde then, dirty blonde.
Wow. So that was your first article. What is the title of your article?
Well, the column was called At Large, which I thought was a kind of a dopey title, but the editor saddled me with that. And it said, "Violent past is still vivid in Irishman's mind." It was about a guy named Jerry Ford, who was a local character around town. I love local characters, New Haven characters. And he was a courthouse watcher. He would go to the courts and just watch the trials. And just because he knew it was very interesting, what happens in the courtroom.
He didn't have any job or any...
He was retired. I can't remember what his occupation was in his earlier life, but he would just walk around town. He would go to all the Yale lectures, and I just would see this guy walking around town, and when I talked to him, he had a fabulous mind. He was so intelligent, and I started asking him about his life, and he talked about his childhood in Ireland and the troubles and all the violence he witnessed. And so when I finally talked my editors into letting me write a column, just trying to see how it goes, he's going to be number one. He's going to be the first guy I turn to.
Wow, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
And your column's about how long? 800 words?
It's at least 800 words, and I would say a couple hundred words longer than that. It's longer on Sunday generally than it is on Friday. It runs Fridays and Sundays.
Oh, that's interesting. Now, just before we went on air, you told me something that you didn't tell me before, something very, very exciting.
Yes, well, the New Haven Register and Connecticut Magazine are owned by the same company. So when we had a switch over and an editor became the editor-in-chief of Connecticut Magazine, and then I liked this guy, I know him. I said, well, why don't you pick up my column? And he said, that's a good idea, except I don't want people to have read it first in the New Haven Register and then rerun in the Connecticut Magazine.
Right.
So we worked out this arrangement with my editor of the Register that once a month, instead of seeing it in the Sunday New Haven Register, that column will be in Connecticut Magazine instead.
And why don't you write an extra column?
Because it's so much work doing 2 columns every week, plus covering the courthouses, which is another thing I do for the Register, that the idea of writing even more would just...
Put you over the edge.
That would really put me over the edge.
It's your tipping point.
Trying to get up 2 columns every week, get up with the topics, get the interviews, do the research, do the writing, plus cover all these court cases, that's plenty.
Yes, we were talking a little bit before the show began about the court cases. You were in court twice today, and you're in court every day, just about?
At least 3 or 4 days a week, depending on what the cases are. And today was just happened to be a really busy day where a trial was starting, and it was a sexual assault case, and the witness just couldn't tell her story about what allegedly had happened, so the charges were dismissed. So I had to go back and write that story, and then there was another case at the courthouse across the street in New Haven, another sexual assault case. I just had to monitor to see what might happen there. So in other words, I had to do that and hang around that courthouse and then come back and write my column for tomorrow's paper. So it was one of those days.
And you're here tonight.
And here I am. Yeah.
And aren't you having fun?
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it when you lie to me. I'm going to call you Randy and not Randall, although that's
good.
how I know you, Randall.
People call me Randy, so that's fine.
Randy, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Well, I have to tell you, you wrote a column that I well, you wrote more than one that I loved. Okay, I'm just going to say that. But there are a few that stand out in my memory where I really didn't have to do any research for this show because I already knew a lot of the columns. And one that stood out was about the Leatherman. And I just love, and I love the Leatherman. How did you come about that story?
Well, I've always known about the Leatherman because I grew up in Mount Kisco, New York, Westchester County, and that was part of his circuit. He would go around Westchester County and go up through into Connecticut and do a loop, very precise, and people could time what day it was by when he appeared, and he would appear at people's doors, and he knew whose doors to go to because they would feed him, and he was dressed all in leather, and he couldn't talk. He had either a speech deficiency or he was French or a language problem, but people sensed this gentleness about him. And this goes back in like the 1800s. And so I knew about him when I came to Connecticut. There were stories about him here too. And so a couple years ago, a guy recreated his travels and walked all around Connecticut and New York following in his footsteps. So I interviewed him about his interest in the Leatherman. And they also, he was buried, the Leatherman, in Ossining, New York.
Didn't they dig that up?
They dug it up, and because they thought that the grave just said Leatherman instead of his real name, and then researchers and his supporters thought that was unfair to him, that he should have his real name on the gravestone. So they dug up his grave and found just some bones, moved the bones over a little farther up the hill of the cemetery, and put his proper name on it with a really nice headstone.
I thought one reason they were digging it up was because he was being impinged by a highway that was going by there, or
it
not?
was close to the road, but it wasn't an imminent danger. It was just more like he's kind of off here on the side, and it just says the old Leatherman instead of, Jules.
What was his real name?
Jules.
Jules.
And
last name?
I'm blanking on his last name. It's a few years since I've written about him, but he deserved it.
Yes.
He deserved to have a bigger grave with a more proper setting.
And by today's standards, I remember thinking at the time, you might even mentioned it in your article, but by today's standards, he's probably autistic. That sounds autistic.
He might have been, or some sort of other mental problem. I don't know.
Yeah,
that's one of the great mysteries.
Yes. He never had a wife then.
No. Apparently, he had, the folklore was that he suffered some sort of broken-hearted episode.
Oh, we love that. I personally like that one.
Folklore.
You might want to elaborate on that in some column in the future. Okay, fine. So I loved him, but I also loved when you talked about the typewriter man, Whitlock, and you would go on his birthday?
Right. Manson Whitlock was a wonderful guy, and he had been working in this typewriter shop, repairing typewriters for many, many decades, even when typewriters were losing their marketplace to the computer. He just stayed up there, and we moved around from time to time, downsizing, and in the later years he was on the second floor on York Street, actually near Toad's place. And he was so much fun to talk to, just a gentle guy, and funny, and he would just toss off these lines, like he would say, well, people ask me, have you worked here your whole life? And he would say, well, not yet.
I remember that from the column.
Yeah.
I remember
so
that.
I would go up there with my pad, and I would go as a friend, but also I always knew to have my pad because everything on his mouth was so funny, and I could use it for follow-up columns. And I got in this habit of, on his birthday every February, I would go in and give him a cupcake from down the street. And
I noticed you don't do that on my birthday.
Well, let me know.
Yeah. But that was so sweet that you did it. He must have looked forward to seeing you.
Yeah, he became like a father figure to me. So it was always fun. I didn't just go on his birthday. I would just stop in there and see how he was doing. And he'd be there smoking his pipe and tossing off these great one-liners. And
he was in his 90s, wasn't he?
Yeah. He lived to be 94, 95.
Yeah, and I'm thinking smoking a pipe.
He stopped that in later years. He knew he had to, but just a great guy. I really miss him. Yeah.
Well, it was great. I loved reading about him in the column. And then you get me in trouble. I don't know if you know this, but you really do get me in trouble. You wrote about a place in Clinton. I grew up in Clinton. It's on the Clinton-Westbrook line. I'm not sure which town it's in.
It's in Clinton, very close to West Brookline
Okay.
on Route 1.
There's a donut shop, Beach Donuts.
Right, no relation to my family, but they started at Sound View in Old Lyme, and I became aware of them because my girlfriend, later being my wife, lived in Old Lyme on the beach, and they actually had the donut girls who would come down the street selling donuts. Donuts, fresh baked donuts. When she told me this, I couldn't believe it. You got to show me these people. And,
Was your wife a donut girl?
she was not, and I started to give her some grief about that. But I said, one day I must marry this woman. This is great. And so that establishment moved in later years. Well, they're still there at Sound View selling donuts, but they're all the time down now in Clinton, Beach Donuts. And they have a regular thing where you can go and sit and you can do takeout and you sit at the chairs, and boy, are those good donuts.
Well, you know, I'm not sure if I believed you. So I was going to, not that you cared or even knew me or even know so I thought, I am always going down to that area because I just do. And I thought, well, let me stop in and try one of these donuts that are supposed to be so good that you stop and you bring up to your daughter was she at Brown?
Yes,
You get
her soccer team demanded it because they knew these beach donuts are good.
Okay, yeah, so you said. So you said.
And so you found out.
So I found, oh my God, are they good?
They
and
are.
I love the lemon ones.
Yep.
I love the lemon donuts, and they are good.
And the cinnamon?
I can't get past the lemon.
Well, whatever you, whatever.
Maybe
you know
I'll
you're
try
going to get a good fresh donut.
Yeah, well, you know, and they make them right there, and
Yep.
they come. And one time, I said I went in highly depressed because I said, "You don't have any lemon donuts." She goes, "Well, if you can wait a few minutes, they're coming out." Oh yeah.
And they came out hot.
Yes.
Hot and fresh, yeah.
So I want you to know you are personally responsible for my downfall. I just want you to know that. So can you live with this?
In other words, you're going there too much, too often?
Well,
you know,
you're responsible
little
because
willpower.
I can't blame myself.
Well, there's a place in New Haven called Square Donuts, and he opened his place right on the path, the block where my courthouse is. Not my courthouse, but I go to that courthouse all the time to cover stories, and it's a lot of willpower to walk past it. But be inspired by my example that usually I am able to walk past it
Wait,
without going and eating a Square Donut. And I love their Square Donuts.
What street is that on?
It's on Church Street, where it becomes Whitney Avenue, near the Grove Street intersection. Across the street from Anna Liffey's pub. Everyone knows Anna Liffey's.
I don't, but I can.
Well.
And what's the title? What's the name of their?
Tony's Square Donuts, and it used to be Orange Side downtown, and that's where he began his Square Donut thing. They're very good.
Doug is my director. Doug, write that name down. Tony's Square Donuts.
Yeah.
Guess where I'm going
Go
tomorrow?
see Tony, yeah.
So that's good to know. But I'm gonna. You're gonna get me more in trouble. But then I had my cat. My cat lived till she was 24 years old.
Wow.
I know. She just passed away last year.
I'm sorry, 24.
24.
A good run.
Well, she,
Whoa.
well, she had cancer when she was 12 or 13. And I told her if I was going to spend this kind of money on her, I expected her to live. And she was afraid to die. So she made it to 24. And then when I brought her into the vets, I said, this is what I want you to do. I want you to give her a shot, and I want to take her home. So the vet looked at me and said, okay, that might not happen. Because he knew he had a lunatic on his hands. But I loved my cat, and I loved reading about your cat. Tell me, what was your, Leo, did you say?
Leo, yeah. Leo was a real character and a lap cat, full of personality, but he developed an eating disorder when he was about 12.
When you say an eating disorder, what does that mean exactly?
Something with his intestines or his gastronomical system where he would want to eat all the time, but he couldn't retain it, so he was skinny. So he was walking around the neighborhood, and he started going to people's backyards begging for food, like their grills in my neighborhood, and people said, oh, this cat is so skinny. Their owners obviously are neglecting this cat, those terrible, abusive owners. And I started following him around, realizing he was kind of in everybody's backyards and sometimes even in the street. And so I tried to reassure everybody, we're feeding him, but he just has this disorder and he doesn't retain the food. So what the thing of the column was how nice people were being to try to help him out, to get him out of traffic if he was in traffic because his mind seemed to be going, or to feed him because they thought he was so hungry. So I was touched by what my neighbors were doing.
I have a vision of, this is just a vision that came to me while you were talking. Your cat is going in some backyard in New Haven. You're following him into the backyard. And I'm thinking 911. You know?
Yeah.
No, huh?
Yeah, no, I was just able to observe him where he was hanging out in the garbage cans, on the grills.
The vet couldn't help with this?
The vet did help, but it was an ongoing problem that some kind of details are kind of yucky, really, and I don't want to go into those kind of yucky details. But we so many trips to the vet. My wife started calling the vet my girlfriend because I went so often to see her to try to work this out.
Well, now you know you have issues when the vet's your girlfriend. I'm just saying.
I have another cat. Leo has passed away, unfortunately, but our other cat, Casey, also a yellow cat, has an eating disorder, but we have found through our vet a program of treatment that really does these little pills every day, really manages it. So that's a happier story.
That is a much happier story. Now, I want to ask you, I know the columns that you also write a column about license plates or things in the back of the car?
Once a year, every December, I write the best bumper stickers I've seen this year.
Bumper stickers, yes.
And what I like about that is through the year, I have a pad in my car and I'm always writing down something I see that's funny, interesting, witty. And I always encourage the readers to send in what they've seen. What I like about the column is the feedback and the response and the back and forth of readers. And so I get good suggestions from readers and what I see, and so every year I throw in about 30 of the best ones I've seen and during that year. And it reflects the mood of the country, like what people think politically, what are the issues, or what are just the funny ones.
It does. Now, how do you find subjects for your columns? Because you've been writing, how long have you had this column? Since 1980.
I did start in 1980. I left for a while to freelance in Boston. I came back and wrote columns 3 a week from 1987 to 89. Then I left again and came back in 97. And shortly after, a couple years after that, the column resumed. So about the last 18 years, twice a week. But as I say,
that's a lot.
It's a lot. What I like is the feedback with the readers, and many of my ideas for topics, characters people talk to come from readers. And I also just make it a habit of not being in the office that much, rather be downtown, walking around or in adjoining towns, the Shoreline, Hamden, wherever, getting ideas, looking at posters, seeing listings, and just keeping my antenna up and my nose to the ground. And I can just always say, well, that sounds like an interesting person.
Well, a recent column you had about I know this isn't in there, the hot dog man in New Haven, and you're commenting that he has a hot dog with pineapple and coconut.
Right, Jake's Diggity Dogs.
Okay, Jake's, and I it's too much of a stretch for me. It's too much out of my comfort zone. But apparently, you're dying to try it.
Well, when I saw it listed there, I thought I got to ask Jake to have one of those dogs, but I got so busy writing down what he was telling me, and he was such a great interview. You just wind him up, and he goes on and on about New Haven history and the old New Haven Arena, and his family history. His family were in the Costume Bazaar for many years. That was a great place.
Yes, that was.
So it was hard to even take time to eat anything there. But I want to go back, and I noticed that on the menu. It sounds good.
Oh, okay, fine.
I'm going to try it.
Fine. We're not going to go into that. I want to know, what do you think is going to happen to journalism? I mean, we all know about the declining subscription rates.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen to the New Haven Register?
Well, all newspapers are finding that they've got to do online, and that the hard copy, the daily newspaper, is taking more and more of a back seat to that. And I think as we see the demographics, the younger readers are not buying the newspaper, they're going online, that inevitably as people age and are no longer with us, and there goes that reader of the newspaper, we're going to have fewer and fewer people buying newspapers.
Well, how are you going to make money online?
They're hoping that the online sales through online advertising will pick it up.
Because I have to tell you, I don't even know if you remember this. I used to get the Journal Courier in the morning,
yes,
and the New Haven Register in the afternoon, and loved it. And now, if you take away my New Haven Register, how will I drink my coffee?
I know.
Do you feel my pain?
I do, and I hope that that doesn't happen for a long time. I don't know what I can promise in that regard. I remember I started the New Haven Register in 1977, and the Journal Courier staff was there. We were all in the same building in Orange Street, a wonderful, funky old building near where the arena used to be. And we were in competition with each other. We were all covering the city together, and the Register people would come in around 7 a.m., work till around 3 p.m., our deadline. Then that evening's paper would come out. The Journal Courier people would come in about that time, mid-afternoon, start working on their stories for the next morning's paper. And we shared desks, and we were all kind of hiding our copy from each other because we'd only scoop by the Journal Courier.
Yes.
So I was sad when the Journal Courier went out of business in the 80s.
I was very sad.
And the Register became the morning paper, the sole daily paper.
Yeah, I was very sad. Did you find it hard making the transition from typewriter to computer?
It was a transition, yeah. It used to be we just type out our stories and you cut and paste them with a glue pod, and it was really, we thought, well, this is the way it's done. And so it was a transition, but then you realize that's so much better than cutting and pasting with glue.
Well, but, yeah, okay, fine. Now, I understand you write other articles for the Register. How are you assigned these articles?
Well, my beat is to cover the New Haven courthouse downtown, and that's the most important cases, such as murder cases, manslaughter cases, sometimes sexual assault cases, which I was covering today. We play it up big when someone gets arrested in these very serious charges. And so, in our view, and I certainly share this, we have to follow this to the courts. Well, are these charges proven? And if so, what is the sentence? And how do people testify about this? And what is the impact on the families of the victims? Or if it's not proven to be the charges are unfounded and he's found not guilty, cover that too and say this person was cleared. So there are a lot of cases that I have to follow and just monitor what's happening. This person's on the docket. Well, is it going to go forward? Is the trial going to start? Well, try to cover that testimony, most important testimony, and if found guilty, go back for the sentencing months later.
Are you able to turn your day off at night? Because it sounds like this could be almost 24/7.
Well, I think the column is 24/7 because I always think, well, what's coming up? What are my topics going to be for next week? What might be a topic for me? So as I say, the antenna are always out. You don't go home at night and just forget about it.
Does your wife ever suggest a column to you?
She does.
Do you listen to her?
Oh yeah, she has good ideas.
I'm good, and you might want to underscore this in the tape and let her make sure she reads it.
Yeah, well, we met at the New Haven Register. She was a reporter there many years ago.
Is that right?
Yes, we did, an office romance.
Wow.
So she knows the business and she has ideas.
Now, were you competitors or were you not?
We weren't. We were both in the New Haven Register, and she at the beginning was covering Meriden and then Milford, so we were not competing. That was good, not to be competing with her.
Oh, I didn't know you met her there.
Yeah.
That is so cute. And you have 2 daughters.
Yes.
Now, I was very interested to learn that one of your daughters works for O Magazine and does book reviews for them.
She freelances for them, yes. She writes, she started out reviewing young adult fiction, and now she's doing even some adult fiction. Just capsule reviews of books, and Oprah's, so big on books.
Yes.
So you might see a 2-page spread with a lot of little capsule reviews, which my daughter has to very quickly, should be a speed reader, to go through a lot of books and say, well, is this worth you buying? Is this a good book?
Yes. And your other daughter is still in school. She's at Brown University and majoring in modern media, and we'll see how that goes and
what that might lead to.
That's it. Do either of them? Well, the one the one at Oprah freelances writes. Does she want to do other kind of writing? You said something about she has a book on the table.
Well, she met she went to NYU and she met someone there who just is one of these incredibly charismatic travelers and writes online about her travels and has amassed all these followers online. So my daughter had gotten to know her and was interested in what she was doing, and they got to be friends. And they pitched this idea that Natalie, my daughter, would do a lot of the writing about this this online traveler presence person.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And so they actually have a book contract, and they're working on that.
And that's not easy to get.
Yeah.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
What about for youngsters still in high school, possibly even college? What would you suggest to them about a career in journalism?
Well, first of all, I'd say you should be reading. Read books, read newspapers, read magazines, read online, so you know what's happening, and that'll make you a better writer. There's a lot of doomsday talk about there are no jobs in the industry, but we're still hiring people, and we still hire young reporters who come in, so it's not impossible to get those jobs. And in the future, we will need online writers if the newspapers aren't there.
Good point.
So there are these platforms.
I hate to cut you off and hate to stop this, but we're just about out of time. Oh. It flies by, doesn't it?
It does.
And if people wanted to contact you, possibly with a story idea, feedback, or just want to chat with you, how would they contact you?
Beach, BEACH, at nhregister.com.
Okay.
That's the best way.
That's good. So no personal home phone numbers.
Just do it at work. Yeah, do it at work.
Fine. And if you would like to, if you forget that, you could always go to the New Haven Register. He's in there all the time. But you also can contact me at jmdteach@comcast.net or call the studio. They'll forward your information to me. They won't give it to you directly, but they'll forward it to me and I can contact you. Randall, Mr. Beach, thank you so much.
You're
welcome.
Was
a pleasure having you on the show.
Thank you for having me on. It was a lot of fun.
I would love to have you come back again sometime.
Okay, well, thanks. I'll try to do that.
Good,
yes.
Thank you. So this is